He shouted like she'd just shattered the windshield. But all she did was listen. Western. The sun hit the chrome of the Ferrari like it was forged to blind. The entire hotel valet circle shimmered with heat, champagne chatter, and status symbols lined up like trophies. Every car was black or white, but the red Ferrari stood alone like it knew it didn't need to beg for attention. Just 3 feet away, Danielle leaned down, one hand still holding a dripping sponge. Her uniform was soaked near the hem, her back slightly arched, not because she admired the car, but because something didn't sound right. The engine had coughed a minute ago. Not loud, just off. She tilted her head. One step closer, then 2 fingers just barely touched the hood. Don't touch the car. A voice sliced through the crowd like glass breaking. It was sharp. And too loud for the distance. Danielle froze. Her fingers hovered, not even pressing weight. You don't get to touch a machine like this, the man barked, walking fast from the marble steps. Slim suit, hard jaw, wristwatch that cost more than her last 3 jobs combined. Do you have any idea what this is worth? Danielle straightened slowly. She didn't blink. Her hand fell back to her side like a feather landing on tile. Behind her, a ballet boy shrank into his blazer. Guests on the patio leaned over their cocktails. Phones quietly tilted upward. I was just, Danielle began, voice even. I don't care what you were just, he snapped. Do your job. That doesn't include laying your hands on things you'll never afford. Laughter rippled from a woman in heels. One of the event organizers jogged over, whispering to the CEO, trying to save face. Danielle stepped back. Her shoulders were square, but her eyes didn't argue. The CEO gave her one last look, cold, dismissive, and turned away toward his car, flicking the key fob with too much pride. The Ferrari coughed again. It didn't start. Another click. Nothing. He paused, blinking, then hit the key again harder this time. Still nothing. The crowd waited, that awkward kind of silence where even judgment feels shy. Danielle didn't move, but her eyes did subtle, scanning the grill, the intake, the sound. Then she whispered, almost to herself, it's not the battery. The words slipped out quiet, certain. Not a claim. Not a challenge. Just truth, spoken beneath breath and over insult. And in the next 60 seconds, someone will wish they'd listened. Have you ever been wiping down a car, sweeping a floor, just doing your job, when someone looked at you like you didn't even exist? If that's ever happened to you, tell me in the comments. And if you've ever wished someone had pressed record just a minute sooner, tap subscribe now. Because what's coming next might be the moment that haunts them forever. The key fob clicked again. Still nothing. The billionaire's jaw clenched, but he masked it with a dry laugh, tossing a glance over his shoulder as if this was part of some amusing delay. Must be the heat, he said to no one in particular. Then, with sudden venom, he turned back toward Danielle. I told you not to touch it. Now it's acting up. What did you do? Danielle's eyebrows barely moved. Her voice remained quiet. I didn't touch the engine. Sir, I only irritated for your nose. You touched it? He stepped forward. You think fingerprints don't matter? You think that you can handle things that aren't yours? From the side, a uniformed valet whispered something into his earpiece. A moment later, a hotel security guard appeared, broad shoulders, clean blazer, and that forced calmness of someone told to be discreet. The guard looked at Danielle, then at the CEO, hesitant. She's contracted with the wash team, sir. She's allowed on this level. She's not allowed near my property, the CEO growled. Get her out of the circle. Now. No one wants. Danielle didn't argue. She picked up her sponge, moved 2 steps back, and stood still, back straight, eyes lowered, but not defeated. A woman in sunglasses whispered to her husband, why do they always think they know better? Someone else raised their phone, the lens catching Danielle's frame in the same shot as the motionless Ferrari. The security guard cleared his throat again. Sir, the car. It's still not starting. Another pause. The CEO's hand twitched. Fine. Call someone from Ferrari service. Tell them to bring tools. He didn't look at Danielle again. But the heat in the air had shifted, and so had the eyes around her. One man in a Navy suit murmured, not unkindly, "Poor girl, that wasn't even her fault." Danielle said nothing, but her gaze had already returned to the Ferrari. It wasn't the insult that stung, it was the sound the engine made. And in that small pause between noise and silence, she heard something no one else did. The service tech arrived wearing branded gear and a clipboard tucked under one arm. Young, sharp, confident in the way people are when they assume the fault isn't theirs. He popped the hood, checked the dash, then crouched beside the driver's seat. Click. Nothing. He adjusted a fuse. Tried again. Still nothing. From across the valet loop, the billionaire's arms folded tighter. His sunglasses reflected his own car as if it were something beneath him now. The technician stood up, less confident. Could be the ignition relay or maybe a software fault. These newer models are sensitive. Fix it, the CEO barked. A low murmur rolled through the patio like rising wind. One woman, drink in hand, leaned toward her friend. It's ironic, isn't it, all that money? And it still won't start. Someone chuckled. A phone rose higher. Another angle captured. Danielle was still in frame, quiet, peripheral, forgotten, but not gone. She didn't speak, but she watched. Every click, every failed attempt, every flash of frustration on the tech's face. Her eyes scanned the movements like someone solving a puzzle they've seen before. Then, without shifting her feet, she whispered, not loud enough for the crowd, but enough for herself. It's not the relay. The technician tried again. Failed again. A second phone camera blinked red. The live stream had begun. From behind her, someone muttered, "Isn't that the same girl who touched it?" She jinxed it. Danielle didn't turn. Her gaze stayed on the hood, the sound, the silence. And beneath that silence, something more. A third click. Then a cough. Then nothing. The technician wiped sweat from his neck. Danielle tilted her head again, like she had at the beginning. This time, the sound told her exactly where to look. And it wasn't under the hood. By now, 5 phones were up, some pretending to film the car, others not pretending at all. Someone tagged this, a young man in designer sneakers said, adjusting his frame. Ferrari fail at the Royalton. His girlfriend giggled, eyes on Danielle. No, tag her. She touched it, and now it's cursed. Danielle said nothing. She stood with the sponge still in her hand, fingers damp, back straight. She wasn't posing. She wasn't trying to explain. She just watched. Behind her, the technician climbed out of the car again, this time slower, more cautious. It might need a full diagnostic, possibly an ECU reset. Unacceptable, the CEO snapped. This is a 7-figure machine. It should work. Another voice, older, southern accent, chimed in from behind a camera. Should work, yeah, but maybe it's not about the machine. The CEO turned. What does that mean? The man shrugged. Means maybe you're not listening to the right person. It was the first time anyone acknowledged Danielle out loud. Several heads turned toward her. One woman took off her sunglasses. Another man lowered his drink. Danielle didn't flinch, but she did finally speak. Soft. Sefornuan. Almost careful. I've seen this before, she said. Not loud. Just enough. The billionaire scoffed. You've seen it in What's Your Soap bucket? Someone snorted. But it wasn't a full laugh. More like an exhale caught between uncertainty and discomfort. Danielle glanced at the tech, then at the exhaust, then the rear tire Menano one, Ihiur Malwan. She wasn't trying to prove anything, but she was noticing everything. The crowd didn't speak, but they didn't look away either. The moment was suspended, not by force, but by the stillness of someone who shouldn't know and might. Then came her sentence. Not a request, not a boast. May I try something? May I try something? Her voice didn't rise. It didn't challenge. It simply existed like an option no one expected. The technician blinked. The CEO turned, lips parting with disbelief. You want to, what he said, louder than needed. Danielle took one slow step forward. Sponge still in hand. Her uniform still damp. But her eyes, they held no fear. Just 30 seconds, she said quietly. I think I know what's wrong. You think, he half laughed. And where exactly did you earn your certification, miss? A ripple of nervous laughter tried to find footing, but fell flat. The technician hesitated. Sir, I mean, nothing else has worked so far. The billionaire turned sharply. You're seriously suggesting I let her touch my car? She hasn't touched the engine, the tech said softly. Yet, another moment, the kind that tastes like tension in the back of the throat. Danielle placed the sponge in her bucket, slowly deliberate. She stepped forward again, one breath at a time. Every eye followed. No one cheered. No one stopped her. But no one stepped in either. The CEO's jaw locked. Touch it, and you pay for any scratch. Danielle nodded once. Understood. She reached for the hood latch, not fast, not slow. The metal clicked. And as the hood lifted, a breeze cut across the circle, scattering 2 napkins from a cocktail tray nearby. No one noticed. They were watching something else. She leaned in, not just with her body, but with the weight of someone who'd done this before. Not here, not dressed like this, but years ago, somewhere far from marble floors and angry billionaires. Somewhere, with oil-stained hands and a father who taught her how to listen before touching. Danielle didn't move like someone hoping this would work. She moved like someone who had done this before again and again, just not here. Her hand found the hood latch without hesitation. No fumbling, no searching, just a simple click, followed by the soft lift of metal. Her motion was careful, not hesitant, deliberate, not showy. She propped the hood up with ease, as if the weight of this luxury machine meant nothing to her. A man nearby, wearing a pale linen blazer, leaned closer to his friend and whispered, She knows what she's doing. But Danielle wasn't paying attention to the voices anymore. Her eyes scanned the engine compartment like someone skimming a familiar passage in an old book, already knowing the shape of each sentence. Nothing about her gaze was casual. She wasn't impressed or intimidated. She was remembering. Years ago, she'd stood on 2 milk crates just to see into the hood of an old Civic her father had been working on. The shop was little more than a tin box with one squealing fan and a radio that only played the blues. Her father, sweat soaking through his undershirt, had slid out from under the chassis and looked up at her with a crooked smile. You want to learn? She hadn't spoken. She just nodded. Instead of handing her a socket wrench, he gave her a service manual, weathered, with oil on the corners. But it wasn't for a Civic. It was for a Ferrari 360 Modena. She'd blinked at the red cover like it was a key to another world. Not a car we'll ever see in this shop, her father said, wiping his hands. But engines don't care what badge they wear. They all run the same if you know how to listen. Back in the present, Danielle didn't touch anything just yet. She simply leaned in and listened. There was a faint hum in the silence, something mechanical beneath the stillness. A whisper in the rhythm of a high-performance machine trying to speak but choking on its breath. And Danielle, she knew that sound. She always had. Danielle leaned forward, elbows steady above the curve of the engine bay. She didn't rush. Her eyes scanned the system, not like someone guessing, but like someone confirming something she'd known all along. The intake looked clean, but the smell told a different story. A faint whiff of burnt carbon, harmless to most, but to someone who grew up in grease and engines, it whispered of buildup, hesitation, delay. She found the coil connection and gently nudged the lead. Not to fix, just to remind the system to align. It wasn't about brute force. It was rhythm, sensitivity, timing. Her fingers moved with a precision no school could teach, but life could burn in. It reminded her of the first time she stood on a stage, a high school diploma in one hand and a full-ride scholarship in the other. Mechanical engineering. Top 10 in her state, the first in her neighborhood to get that far. Her father had cried that day, not loudly, but in the way his shoulders tightened when he hugged her. He believed she would change everything. And maybe she would have if not for the phone call. Her mother had collapsed at work, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Danielle packed her things that night and left campus the next morning. Just for a semester, she told her roommate. But semesters turned into years. Her scholarship expired. The debt didn't. The world kept turning without her. She never went back. She exhaled quietly, brushing her hands on her uniform not from nerves, but out of habit. Then she lowered the hood. The click of the latch was soft, final. She didn't look at the crowd, didn't seek anyone's approval. She simply turned to the technician, voice steady. "Try it now." There was nothing dramatic about her tone. No arrogance. No plea. Nummer Janitor, Vishwasuwan. Just instruction from someone who knew what she was doing. The technician hesitated. The crowd didn't breathe. And somewhere in that fragile silence between doubt and proof, Danielle stood still like someone waiting for a sound she already knew would come. Danielle didn't speak. She didn't need to. The words were already circling among the crowd. "She said it like she's done this before," someone whispered. "She fixed something," another added. That car didn't make that sound earlier. The CEO moved closer to the vehicle, his shoulder brushing the technician aside. "You don't touch the key," he ordered. The tech hesitated. "Sir, we've already tried every standard protocol. If she made an adjustment, we should." "She's not part of this team," the CEO cut in. "She's not even supposed to be in this area." He looked at Danielle, and his voice sharpened. "You've got no credentials, no authority, no business touching something you can't afford to fix if you break it." Danielle's arms remained at her sides. She didn't flinch. She didn't frown. Her gaze stayed locked on the car as if it were speaking, and she was the only one listening. Someone in the back cleared their throat. Another lifted their phone higher. A valet glanced at his coworker, eyebrows raised. A man near the front stepped forward slightly. "Sir," he said carefully, "I think everyone just wants to see what happens." The CEO didn't answer. He glanced at the car, then at the eyes forming around him. For the first time, he looked surrounded. The tech gave him a moment to object. None came. With a quiet nod to Danielle, the tech leaned into the cabin. His hand wrapped around the key. He paused, just long enough for silence to grow thick. Click it near. The dashboard lit up. 5 seconds from now, this crowd would either laugh or go absolutely still. Click. The engine came alive, not in a roar, but a low, confident hum. It didn't scream for attention. It didn't need to. It ran like it had something to prove, and already had. The technician leaned in, squinting at the gauges. "That's perfect," he said under his breath, half in disbelief. A ripple passed through the crowd. They weren't cheering. Not yet. They were recalibrating. Danielle took a single step back from the vehicle. Her breathing stayed steady, but her eyes flicked once toward the hood, then settled on the rhythm of the engine. It wasn't pride on her face. It was familiarity. Like this moment had happened before, just not here. The CEO stood frozen, one hand gripping his belt buckle too tight. His jaw shifted, and for the first time, the slickness cracked. His eyes didn't go to Danielle. They scanned the crowd, searching for control that wasn't there anymore. "She actually fixed it," someone whispered. "No scanner, no tools. She just listened." A woman in a green scarf glanced sideways. "Reminds me of my aunt. She used to rebuild motorcycles barefoot in Georgia." A teenager near the front muttered, "Yo, this is wild. I'm live, Sir. Already got 4,000 watching." Someone else zoomed in. "Janitor, Nemo. Ferrari, Nikiwanashari. Billionaire. It writes itself." Danielle turned to the technician. "It's ready?" He nodded slowly, smiling. "You saved us a tow." And his reputation. Behind her, a man crossed his arms. Or she just got lucky. People bump wires all the time. The mood wavered. But then another voice, softer, chimed in. "Isn't that Danielle Davis?" She went to Monroe Vocational. She was a top tech kid back in the day. The technician spoke louder, cutting through the noise. That wasn't luck. That was diagnosis. Danielle didn't answer. Instead, she reached for a rag from her pocket, still damp from washing, and wiped a tiny smudge off the front Ferrari logo. One gentle motion, not to make a point, just instinct. The crowd went still again. No one told her to leave. No one stopped her either. She stepped away from the car, quietly. But the engine behind her kept humming. And this time, so did the cameras. The CEO finally moved. He cleared his throat, sharp and out of place in the heavy quiet. She must have noticed something earlier, he said, too quickly. That's all it was. But the words landed wrong. Thin. Mr. One thin. Defensive. No one nodded. No one agreed. A woman near the front, arms folded across a white clutch, didn't hide her tone. Then why didn't your guy notice it? The technician didn't turn around. He was still watching Danielle walk. Near the crowd's edge, a young man watching through his phone whispered, "This just hit 10,000 views." A woman beside him wiped her eye and laughed softly. "I'm crying, and I don't even know her name." Someone replied, "Danielle Davis. She went to Monroe Vocational. My cousin said she was the best in the program before she disappeared." That name spoken aloud seemed to ground the space again. Danielle paused near the valet station. One of the boys stepped aside, awkwardly holding a towel, as if unsure whether to salute or apologize. She gave him a single nod. Not for them, not for the crowd, just for herself. Then she turned not toward the cameras, but toward the engine still humming behind her. That sound didn't just follow her. It affirmed her. "She's not a mechanic," the CEO said louder, attempting to reset the moment. "She doesn't have certification. That matters." His voice carried, but not the authority it once did. A few heads turned, not toward him, toward each other. "She didn't need a certificate," someone murmured. She made the car start. The man in the navy suit near the back folded his arms. She didn't just start it. She read it, like a damn language. A pause, then a ripple. "She didn't even flinch," said the woman in green. The CEO forced a chuckle. "Brittle and too late. You're all being ridiculous. One lucky adjustment doesn't make her a technician." But no one laughed with him. Behind the crowd, a woman in a tan coat pulled out a small tripod, snapping it open with practiced ease. "Angles clean now. Audio good. We got her name right." A guy beside her nodded. "Danielle Davis. Top vocational grad. Dropped out, rumors say, to take care of family." She disappeared. The woman raised her brow. "Well, she just reappeared." Danielle didn't stop walking, but she did pause briefly when she heard her name. Just enough to let the moment breathe. The engine continued to hum behind her, so precise it felt rehearsed. A valet ran past her to answer a phone call, whispering excitedly into the line. Yeah, she's still here. It just happened. You're going to want the footage." The CEO opened his mouth again, but the words died somewhere between his chest and his tongue. Because no one was listening anymore. Not to him. And at the edge of the crowd, just outside the chaos, someone recognized her face and didn't put their phone down. They raised it higher and pressed record. "Danielle." The voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean through the murmur. "Calm connection. Mate insurance. Antikiyamin." Slightly raspy. From the right edge of the crowd, Danielle stopped walking. She didn't turn all the way, just enough for her face to catch the light again. The crowd followed the sound. A tall man in a blazer stepped forward, glasses tucked into his collar, holding his phone at his side instead of his face. "Danielle Davis," he said again, more certain now. "From the 2012 Monroe Vocational Advanced Track." A few people looked at each other. Someone whispered, "She's from where?" The man didn't wait for her answer. He turned to the crowd. She was the only student in the program allowed to test directly on client vehicles. She diagnosed a transmission fault by sound when the instructor missed it. Danielle gave him a slow nod. "I remember you," he said, softer now. "You were supposed to intern with Hollinger Tech. You just disappeared." The crowd rippled again this time, not with doubt, but recognition. Like something they'd seen one way had just shifted in place. "She's not just a cleaner," someone said aloud. "She's a technician," another replied. "No, an elite one." The CEO tried to step forward. "None of that's verifiable." But the man with the glasses raised his phone. "I've got class rosters, test scores, senior when and son, and probably a photo or two." He didn't need to show it. The tone of his voice was enough. Danielle looked at him fully now. I didn't disappear, she said. I just had to stop showing up where people thought I didn't belong. She didn't raise her voice, but the silence that followed made it echo anyway. And from somewhere behind the lens, someone finally said what the CEO couldn't stop. She never lost it. They just never looked. She never lost it. They just never looked. The words didn't come from Danielle, but they echoed like truth. The CEO stood rigid, arms locked at his sides. He tried to speak again, but no one was watching him now. The focus had shifted entirely to the woman in the utility uniform who hadn't raised her voice once. Danielle stepped forward, just one pace. She didn't climb onto anything. She didn't ask for silence. She already had it. I started with my dad, she said. He ran a two-car garage behind a chicken farm off Route 12. He could listen to an engine like it was telling a story. Someone in the front smiled faintly. A quiet warmth returned to the space. I got a scholarship to Monroe. Wasn't the best student on paper, but no one beat me in diagnostics. I could hear timing faults in my sleep. You were going to Hollinger. Right, someone asked from the back. She nodded. That was the plan. But my mom got sick. Fast to, I left before midterms. Didn't even say goodbye to half the class. No apology. No dramatics. Just fact. I worked at a car wash. A few kitchens. Laundry. Nairin. When you disappear like that, the world doesn't ask where you went. It just moves on. The man with glasses spoke again. But the skill doesn't go away. Danielle shrugged gently. Only thing I've never had to relearn. The technician, still standing near the car, raised his hand slightly. What she did with that Ferrari, I've got 10 guys in our shop who couldn't replicate it without a scan tool. I'd hire her in a second, someone else chimed in. A third voice. From the far side, I'd follow her into a fire. Laughter bubbled in the edges now, not mockery, but release. Danielle didn't smile. She just exhaled. It wasn't pride. It was relief. And in the middle of all that humbling silence, the only person still trying to hold on to the old narrative was the one with the most to lose. I don't think anyone here understands what it takes to maintain a vehicle like this, the CEO said, voice lifted, arms open as if addressing a courtroom. We're talking about millions of dollars of engineering. It was the first time in minutes he'd sounded confident again. But the confidence didn't land. Someone near the front muttered, "He's doing the thing again." Another chuckled, acting like we imagined the whole thing. The CEO continued, undeterred. I don't know this woman. I don't know her background. But a lucky fix, impressive as it may be, doesn't make her qualified. He looked at Danielle. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She didn't even face him. She was talking quietly to the technician, pointing at something on the engine. Just a small note, professional, simple, effective. The CEO stepped forward. I'm simply saying we should all take a breath before jumping to conclusions. I already did, the technician replied without looking up. She's not the fluke. You were just wrong. That stopped him. He opened his mouth, closed it. A ripple of soft laughter passed through the crowd, not mocking. Just tired. Done. Someone with a press badge pushed forward. Excuse me, Miss Davis, mind if I ask who you're currently working with? Danielle looked up, surprised for the first time. The woman continued. There's already buzz about an offer from Yawari Performance. They're watching the live stream. The CEO blinked hard. He turned slowly toward the camera nearest to him, just in time to see it pan away. Not toward the car. Not toward the crowd. Toward Danielle. He wasn't used to losing attention. But now even his own car had chosen her. The woman with the press badge didn't lower her camera. She leaned forward, checking her screen as the stream numbers ticked higher. 70,000 watching. It's doubling every minute. Someone nearby whispered. She's going to break 1 million before sunset. Danielle stood just outside the inner circle now, but the spotlight hadn't followed the CEO. It had followed her. A black car with tinted windows rolled up near the valet. The door opened, and a man in a tailored Navy suit stepped out. No badge, no security, just confidence. He moved like someone used to being listened to. He approached the technician first, nodding politely, then turned toward Danielle. Mayusurum, Davis, she looked at him, not surprised. Just assessing. My name is Reed. I'm with Marceau Performance Group. We provide engineering consultation for European brands, including, he glanced at the car that won. He offered a card but didn't force it. What we've seen enough. I'd like to invite you to discuss a role on our diagnostics innovation team. Discreetly, if you prefer. Danielle glanced at the card, then back at the crowd, then down to the rag still in her hand. She didn't take the card. Not yet. The CEO finally spoke again. You're offering her a job based on a show that's reckless. Reed turned his head slowly. No. We're offering her a job based on results. He turned back to Danielle. You don't have to decide now. She nodded once, folding the rag, tucking it into her pocket. The cameras kept rolling. Not one of them was pointed at the man who owned the car. They were pointed at the woman who made it run. And somewhere in the endless comment threads, "Let her fix it," was born. You just watched a woman fix $1 million machine, while being doubted every second she breathed. Now ask yourself, if that had been you, would you have stepped forward? Or stayed quiet? If you've ever been in her shoes, comment "They didn't see me either." And if you believe skill doesn't come with a title, hit share, Ferrari, Janitor. Because someone out there needs to be reminded what silence can do. By noon, the hashtag had a life of its own. Let her fix it, Nisamachournon. Danielle did what? She didn't even raise her voice. Clips surfaced from every angle, TikTok, Instagram. Even an old guy on Facebook with shaky hands and 4,000 shares. One video had Danielle's voice overlaid in slow motion. I just had to stop showing up where people thought I didn't belong. Underneath, comments flowed like floodwater. This hit harder than I expected. She's all of us who've ever been ignored in a room full of noise. Where do I donate to her garage? By mid-afternoon, 3 major blogs had published stories. By evening, a verified account from Marceau Performance posted a teaser. Talent isn't hired. It's recognized. Danielle Davis, we see you. And the CEO, he wasn't trending. His company was. A clip resurfaced of him yelling, "You don't even belong here," clipped, cropped, captioned, and stitched into thousands of reels with slow piano music and a growing sea of angry emojis. He issued a statement short, formal, too late. "We respect all professionals in the automotive space." It didn't trend. His PR advisor quit the next day. That night, the board of directors called an emergency session. Sponsors began pulling their logos from the event recap. One internal email, leaked anonymously, read, "We need to regain control of the narrative." But the narrative had moved on. It wasn't his anymore. A man who once mocked Danielle online deleted his video quietly. No apology, just vanished content. People noticed anyway. Someone's grandfather posted, "She reminded me of my sister." Brilliant. But want. Guire. Always overlooked. Not anymore. And somewhere, tucked in a quiet cafe off Main Street. Danielle stirred her coffee with one hand and scrolled with the other. She didn't like the posts. Didn't reply. Didn't even have a public account. She just watched. Not to chase the moment, just to witness it finally shift. He arrived late to the follow-up panel. The room had emptied halfway through the keynote. No one stayed to hear him speak. 2 of the event sponsors were already gone. Their banners had been removed. Their names no longer on the press wall behind him. When he stepped to the microphone, it didn't turn on at first. A tech assistant blinked, checked cables, then looked at him, confused. The mic worked fine 10 minutes ago. He cleared his throat, waiting for attention that never came. Across the hallway, someone was playing Danielle's video on loop. It echoed faintly through the marble. "You don't even belong here." Then cut. Danielle fixing the engine, in slow motion. Behind him, a junior rep from Marceau Performance answered questions from 3 news stations. They weren't there for him. They were there for her. He stepped off stage before his speech even began. Conceal. Back on the event floor, the young man who had laughed the loudest when Danielle first touched the Ferrari was now glued to his phone. He scrolled the clip, frame by frame, watching himself in the background. He looked awful. Shaking his head, he muttered, "She wasn't even rude." Someone beside him added, "She didn't even look at you." That's worse. Danielle walked past him just minutes later, quiet, steady, hands in her pockets. He turned to speak. She didn't stop, didn't glance, just passed him like air. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. One by one, the voices that once overpowered her began to retreat, not because she demanded silence, but because she didn't need to speak anymore. And as the noise faded, what remained finally was recognition. Not for the scandal, but for the work. Danielle didn't walk onto the stage. She waited near the curtain, in the shadow of the podium where the light didn't quite reach. The crowd had filled the auditorium early. No one checked their phones. No one talked. They were waiting for a woman who hadn't said a single word in public since the day she fixed the engine. The host and executive from the National Mechanics Guild cleared his throat and said, "We've honored innovators, inventors, and leaders. But today, we honor someone who didn't wait for a title to prove she belonged." A ripple of applause began. Then a second. Then all at once people rose to their feet. Danielle stepped forward. Not center stage, just enough for them to see her. No speech. No camera smile. She wore the same boots from that morning at the valet stand, and a badge that read nothing but guest. Someone in the audience whispered, "That's her." Another voice, "She's smaller than I thought." But she took up all the space when it mattered. Behind her, a woman from the guild leaned toward the mic. She never submitted a resume, never asked to be noticed. But every mechanic in the hall watched that footage and said the same thing she didn't guess. She diagnosed. A girl in the back, no older than 19, held her phone chest level, recording but not breathing. Danielle noticed. She walked off to the side, toward the girl, quietly removed her own badge and offered it without a word. The girl hesitated. "But I don't," Danielle said. "You will." Back at the podium, the host nodded. In a world loud with noise, she showed us that silence can be skill, that sometimes the best ones don't need to announce themselves. A man from the third row slowly rose to his feet. Late 40s, clean blazer, Marceau crest on his lapel. "I was the first one to call her lucky," he said aloud, not to the room, but to Danielle. He stepped closer to the aisle, voice firm now. "I watched her work, and still I doubted. Because she didn't come with credentials. She came with silence." The room hushed again. He nodded toward her. "I've worked in diagnostics for 19 years. And in 30 seconds, she showed me how blind that can be." Danielle didn't answer. She didn't need to. From somewhere in the rafters, a light shifted slow, like sunrise illuminating her side profile, the grease line on her wrist, the calm in her eyes. One camera shutter clicked, then another, but no one moved. The crowd didn't erupt. Instead, one by one, they stood, not for applause, for acknowledgement. A soft murmur moved through the seats like wind, and as the spotlight settled fully, it became clear. This wasn't a speech. It was a reckoning. The office was quiet, not the kind of quiet that invites focus, the kind that makes you feel like you're not supposed to be there. He sat alone at the head of the conference table. The lights were off, except for the blue glow of a paused video on the projector screen. The frame showed her hand, just the hand adjusting the ignition wire. Her feet were freeze frame, clarity, evidence. He hit play. Danielle leaned forward in the clip, eyes narrowed, lips barely moving. "It's not the battery." Clicking. "No one of them." The engine roared to life. The crowd gasped. Then silence, enough for this show, or spin. He let it play again. And again. No spin. No edit. No distraction. Just the raw footage of what he'd missed, not because he didn't see it, but because he didn't think she was worth seeing. Behind him, someone knocked gently on the door. "Sir, the board is asking if we'll be issuing a formal apology." He didn't turn around. Didn't blink. Just kept staring at the frame where Danielle stepped back, wiped a smudge off the car logo, and walked away without looking back. He whispered, more to himself than anyone, "I already lost more than they know." Outside, The sound of camera shutters echoed through the marble halls. But they weren't for him. They hadn't been for days. In the hallway, two junior associates whispered over their laptops. He was the face of this event. Not anymore. She's on the brochure now. Full front page. No one corrected them. No one mentioned his name. And for the first time, he felt the weight of being exactly what he'd accused someone else of. Irrelevant. Freyan is sure no one. It's him. That evening, at home, the CEO sat at the edge of his leather couch, no TV on, no drink in hand. He opened his laptop. The inbox was flooded. One subject line repeated itself across the networks. Blogs, private chains. Danielle Davis, the silence that rewired an industry. The headline sat above a photo. It wasn't of the car. It was of Danielle kneeling beside it, head slightly tilted, not smiling. He clicked reply on one of the inquiries from a journalist. Typed 4 words. I was completely wrong. Then backspaced them all. Typed again, we paused. Backspaced again. He stared at the blinking cursor until it disappeared. On the corner of the screen, a muted live stream replayed the panel from earlier. The same man from Marceau stood speaking. She didn't change the system. She reminded us what it should have been all along. Across town, Danielle finished wiping her hands on a rag. The girl beside her adjusted the wrench again, brow furrowed, quiet. They didn't speak, but the rhythm of work was enough. And at that exact moment, in 2 places far apart, 2 women leaned forward into engines. One teaching, conceal. One learning. The silence between them said everything. It wasn't a garage anymore. Not just. The sign outside still read Davis Auto, hand-painted, faded from years of sun. But the inside grease-streaked floors, clattering tools, and the sharp smell of metal felt different now. Danielle stood beside the open hood of an old Pontiac. Not a Ferrari. Nothing glamorous. Just a machine that needed help. The girl from the panel was beneath it, socket wrench in hand. Her sleeves rolled past her elbows, sweat at her temples. You listening? Danielle asked. A pause. Then I think it's the serpentine belt. Danielle didn't smile, but she nodded. Good ear. Outside, a car drove past slow enough to stare. Someone pointed toward the shop, not in mockery. In recognition. A mother walked by with a small boy trailing behind. He looked through the open door and whispered, Is she famous? His mother paused. No, she said, but maybe one day you'll be. Inside, Danielle reached for the radio dial. Old soul music crackled into the room, soft and rough around the edges. She leaned against the workbench, eyes half-lidded, body still in rhythm with the engine running behind her. Somewhere on the wall, framed in oil-smudged glass, hung a screenshot from the viral video. The moment before the engine roared. The moment she leaned in, whispered something no one caught until it rewrote everything. Below the frame, on a small brass plate, 4 words. She didn't ask permission. A shadow passed across the open doorway. Danielle looked up. A man in his early 30s stood outside Jean's Dusty, a backpack slung low on his shoulder. He hesitated before stepping inside. I saw the video, he said, not awkward, just unsure. Didn't know garages like this still existed. Danielle didn't reply. He looked around at the space tools hanging without symmetry, a fan turning slow overhead, the radio humming some old Wilson Pickett tune. I used to work HVAC, he added, but I always wanted to work with engines. Didn't have the chance. Danielle wiped her hands on a towel, then handed it to him. He didn't ask what it meant. He just nodded. Behind them, the girl under the car called out, I got the belt loose. Danielle's voice was steady. Then torque it back in and check alignment. Listen close. She turned to the man. You hear better when you work quiet. Outside, the sky had turned amber, the hour when everything looked gold if you stood still enough. Oil shimmered faintly on the floor near the threshold, like the garage itself had bled history into the concrete. And above the doorway, someone had added another line in paint newer, fresher. Respect doesn't wear suits. It wears scars. Sometimes, the loudest legacy is built with grease, silence, and staying. Unveiled wealth, we don't chase power. We uncover the quiet that rewrites it. Have you ever been underestimated until someone saw what you could really do? Share your story in the comments, and if you're still writing it, we're listening.